Discover the Women in Tech Trailblazers podcast, hosted by Tiffany Benitez. Here, the complexities of being a woman in the tech industry are unraveled through discussions on key issues, personal growth, and how to succeed despite systematic challenges. It's a source of empowerment and inspiration for all women at all stages of their tech careers. Welcome to Women in Tech Trailblazers. I am so excited to be back with you guys today for another episode here tackling another topic that I think is so super important to definitely us as women, although I would argue that our allies, really many of these topics we talk about are for women and men alike. However, we kind of try to take the approach of really honing into things that we as women are struggling with or that we have really found impactful in our life, or vice versa, but really just honing in on things that are important for us. And so the topic today, we are going to talk about impact, and impact is important. So I think the reality is we look at volume a lot. So a lot of us, obviously, this is a Women in Tech podcast. We're focused on volume and data, and that speaks to the success of something. But I think impact over volume is an extremely important topic that if you truly want to be able to make, understand where you sit strategically. How do you speak to what you're doing strategically? How does that plug in and show value, whether that's in the community, whether it's in your workplace? You really need to understand impact over just the amount of what's being delivered. And so I have an incredible guest here with me today, and we're going to jump in and talk about this. So I have here today Nirmayee Dighe, and she is a Northeastern University alum and Associate Director of Business Intelligence. She works at the intersection of business and technology, one of my favorite places to play. She leads initiatives across data, analytics, and AI that help organizations make smarter and more strategic decisions. Beyond her day-to-day role, Nirmayee is deeply committed to elevating others in the tech community. She serves as an active mentor with Women in Agile, supporting early career professionals as they navigate transitions, job searches, and growth in the industry. She is also a sought-after speaker on topics related to AI, technology, and career strategy. Known for bringing clarity, practicality, and approachability to complex subjects, and Nirmayee is passionate about empowering individuals, especially women in tech, to lead with authenticity and confidence. Well, it sounds like you're in the right place. As I read through your bio, and I've read through it before as I put things together, I try to think about guests that wholly plug in and are aligned with the mission and vision of where we're at and what we're kind of trying to bring to our audience. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Tiffany.
Yes, so glad you're here. Okay, so you talked about authenticity and confidence in your bio. And, the purpose of our podcast is to really dig into topics that really matter to women and girls across technology, but to also bring awareness to topics that really things that are never talked about. And authenticity is key. So we're really looking to release authenticity across the technology space. So we ask every guest as we start, what does authenticity mean to you?
Yeah, authenticity for me is showing up as my true self rather than trying to fit into a version who I think I should be, or rather who other people think I should be. It means communicating in a way that feels natural, listening before responding, and choosing clarity and intention over performance. So instead of matching the tone or energy of a room, authenticity for me would be trusting my own perspective and allowing it to guide how I contribute. And especially in the age of AI, I think authenticity feels so much more important because we have technology that can analyze data, automate tasks, but it cannot replace the human qualities that make communication meaningful. Empathy, storytelling, context, and the lived experience that we bring, no model can mirror that. So to me, authenticity is a quiet but a powerful differentiator in how we influence, connect, and lead.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I mean, you guys know we talk about AI a lot on this episode. We talk about AI a lot in the technology space, but also everyone in every space is talking about AI. But there are certain human pieces that machines cannot replicate. And so how do we really hone in to who we are in our authenticity that machines can't replicate? So I really loved you using that example. So Also in your bio, you talked about really how you are the intersection between business and technology. And we have a lot of women that end up in those spaces, and end up is the key word, because I think we're not really sure what path to take in technology. Like we go get computer science degrees or right, but we don't really fully understand or explore things like maybe products super early on. I mean, I know now versus like probably when I went into my career, there are different learnings on that. But talk to us about your career path, your journey, and how really did you end up in that intersection? And then how do you feel like women really thrive at that intersection and what we bring to that place?
Yeah, 100%. That's actually an interesting question because my path into tech was actually pretty non-traditional. I was doing my master's at Northeastern and I did not have a clear, perfectly planned career path. I was exploring different courses, trying to figure out what truly excites me. And that's when I came across analytics. And I realized I love working with numbers, but I also love the storytelling that comes with translating data into something people can actually use. And what's funny is that I had some previous experience with public speaking even before entering into tech. I grew up in the world of debates and elocution, so speaking in front of people was not new to me. But when I landed my first corporate position and that internship, I was stepping into a corporate room, and that did feel different because these rooms were filled with leaders, directors, and people who have so much more experience than I did. And even with that public speaking background, I kind of felt intimidated in a way I never really felt before. And it took me some time to understand that a corporate communication requires a different type of presence and confidence. And I want to go back to this one moment that I happened early in my career. I was presenting a dashboard to a leadership team for the very first time. They knew the business inside out, and I was still learning. And halfway through the presentation, someone interrupted me and asked me a question about some dip in some matrix. And I remember for a second, I froze. And I remember thinking, wow, this is really different. This is not like me on stage. And I remember I took a breath and said, hey, let's walk through this together. I opened the underlying details and explained the context behind the dip, connected it to the change that we had happened in the business a week before. And by the end of explanation, people were nodding. They were responding. They were asking me follow-up questions. They were following along. And that moment taught me something so important that confidence in these rooms is not about how long you've been working or how loud you speak. It's about how well you understand your work and how clearly you communicate it. And that's exactly what happened to me. My non traditional journey, where I explored learning by doing rather than just, going over books, actually became my strength. And I think this is something that comes really natural to women because empathy, right? Like you go into a room, you notice your audience, they ask you a question, and you can feel that empathy and you can actually guide the conversation.
I love that. I mean, yes, the like what are the places that we play strong, you know? And there's always that moment of like you said, the moment that you froze, but it's not about the freezing, it's about how do you move forward. So even if we totally feel imposter syndrome in the moment of like, how do I even answer this? I think there's a way to answer it even when you don't know the answer that truly gives you the ability to be seen as a value add in the room, a voice that is trusted, right? And I don't think trusted means you know everything all the time. That's not possible. But it is okay. We walked through this together. She better understood what I was asking, what my question was, and I think your brain can kind of put together how best to respond as you walk through some of that, because the freezing is usually like, I don't know the answer right off the top of my head, but if I can just to them and dig a little further and understand like what exactly they're after, I think it helps you from a complete different way. So I absolutely loved your example. I feel like I could relate in so many ways. A lot of these rooms we're in, if we're being honest, right? We're 28% nationally for women in technology. A lot of these rooms that we're in, we may be the only woman. And so how do you, number one, have you really encountered any gender bias as you've, navigated your career? If you did, like, how did you navigate through that? And then just how do women show up anyways, even when you're the only woman in the room, and really do so with confidence?
That's an interesting question. And I immediately go back to, when you mentioned the gender bias and have you faced it? I think one of my biggest challenges that I faced in tech wasn't always a direct or an obvious gender bias. For me, it showed up in more quieter ways. Like, for example, for me, it often looked like being in rooms where louder voice dominated, where conversations drifted, and where I found myself hesitating to advocate for my own expertise. And there were moments when I had to remind myself that, hey, I am a subject matter expert in this room, and I'm not just invited to watch the meeting go down. I am needed. And I have been lucky to have amazing colleagues and mentor who supported me as I grew. And I remember early on, I in my career, I would set up meetings and discussions would go off track within minutes. Conversations would derail, people would talk over each other, shift topic quickly, and I would just quietly watch the meeting unravel. And looking back, I realized a lot of that came from, like you said, my own imposter syndrome. And it took me some time to understand that leading the conversation was actually a part of my role. And I remember I was feeling overwhelmed, and I went to my then boss and I told him that, hey, this is happening. And he gave me a few tricks that worked for him. He used to set out an agenda. And that sparked something for me because I hadn't been sending out agenda. So I started doing that. That improved things, but not in the way I had hoped. So eventually I came up with agenda, and just below the agenda I would just give them specific outcome or goal of the meeting, and this gave me the confidence to politely interrupt when conversation drifted and bring everyone back to the goal, because that goal itself was reminding everyone, including me, that hey, this is what's the goal of the meeting, this is what the outcome has to be. And this journey is still going because I see so many women navigating the same imposter syndrome that I used to feel. And to be honest, sometimes still do. And we often underestimate how much value we bring into these rooms, because learning to structure conversations, set expectations, and communicating clearly helped me move past those subtle form of biases and claim my space with confidence. And the solution would be different for everyone, right? Like for me, it was that agenda and that outcome. For someone else, it could be, politely interrupting. So one of the most, I would say, impactful parts of my journey is just reminding myself that hey, my presence isn't defined by how loud I am, it's just defined by how clearly and how confidently I use that space. So that keeps me in check.
I love that. I mean, I think keeping ourselves in check is also key, right? It's very easy to always think that like something's against you, or you know what I mean? So I think the accountability of also going back and asking ourselves, like, is it personal? Like, was that directed? Is something that's super important? So I love to hear you say that, of just like keeping ourselves in check. That's really incredible to hear. Okay, so we're talking about this topic about impact over volume, and I want to know, what does using your voice look like when you're not the loudest person in the room? And I think loud is often what's heard,
Mhm.
right? And I think that's what our human brains think. But your voice doesn't always have to be the loudest for you to make impact. And so, talk to us a little bit about what does using your voice look like? You don't have to be the loudest in the room. And how do you also still make sure you're heard? Before we jump back in, a quick thank you to Women in Technology of Northwest Arkansas for being part of this journey. We cannot thank them enough. They continue to create space for women to grow, connect, and lead in tech. Let's get back to the conversation.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to personality. What kind of personality do you have? Do you like to be the loud person in the room? Do you like to be more quiet, but communicate with intention kind of person? And for me personally, I am the second one. I am not the loudest person in the room. And Honestly, there were instances when I tried to be, but I failed because that's just not who I am. And using my voice for me is more about clarity, timing, and intention. So, one thing that I learned was you do not need to compete with the louder personalities. Instead, you can create your own space. So, for example, if I know a meeting will move fast, I will make sure I will come up with a structure, agenda, the goal, everything that I just talked about, for the 30-minute duration. And that helps me level set my expectation early because that gives me the confidence that I have to guide this meeting for the next 30 minutes and make sure we achieve that goal. And that alone gives my voice a foundation before I have even spoken too much. It just prepares me mentally. And in the moment, I focus on the right thing to contribute rather than trying to jump in constantly. I actually try to listen. I understand where the conversation is going, and then I add something that helps it move forward. And that makes people pause. That makes them pay attention, even if I am not the loudest person there. And one of the ways that I've been trying to be clear and direct when I speak is just simple framing like, here's what I'm seeing, or I hear you. Let me offer a different perspective that might help. And when I start with something like this, it signals that what I'm about to say is something intentional. So I'm reminding myself that my voice doesn't always have to be loud or doesn't have to, be volume of words coming out of my mouth. It can be a thoughtful question, guiding a conversation back on track, or even summarize what the room is missing. Because a lot of times, there are so many cross-functional teams and there's a lot of brainstorming session, but we never really summarize those. And these are the moments that create impact without ever needing to raise your volume. So for me, using my voice would be staying grounded, confident, and purposeful.
I love that. And I think that also you make a really good point of like, we don't do a lot of listenings. When you think about meeting, like a lot of listening, like when you think about meeting, we listen, we're all there for a different purpose, right? And we're all like in different groups and leading different efforts. And so we're there listening from the lens or if you will, for we're listening for our layer of what does that mean to us and how does that impact us. And what I think we miss that almost makes a listening to respond versus listening to truly understand. And I think if we do a little bit more listening versus reacting and responding, I think it would take us so much further. But I think that's going to take intentionality. We haven't really been taught that, especially if you think about corporate around you. And again, we're talking about 28%. So most of the leaders are men. And so as we watch over time on like how things are handled and how we approach things, I think we just haven't even like verbally or subliminally been taught that like listening is often better and you don't always have to be loud. So I think the more we can be intentional about reminding ourselves of that, reminding others, or being the example in the room that actually does that, I think is super important. So I love to hear you say how you're navigating that. And hopefully that's a helpful takeaway. I know it is for me, but for all of you guys, as I navigate my career and try to understand how can I be a better leader or how can I be better in general in the spaces that I'm in to truly add value and be able to speak to things strategically, that listening is huge and you don't always have to say something. So I really love your thoughts on that. Okay, so think about like your career and just kind of over the last, I don't know, several years.
Mm-hmm.
Have you, like, has your biggest impact, or you may have a couple, but like one of your biggest impacts, has it ever come from a room where you said the least? And if so, like, talk us through that, because again, I think you touched on it in the last question, but I think I want to go a little deeper because I think if you can provide like how you're navigating this, I think some of us that are also struggling with that, it helps us also figure out how to navigate. So share with us some of that.
Absolutely. And I'm going to go back to my previous example because this was a year-end meeting. And year-end meeting is usually a little chaotic because, we are deciding goals, we are coming up with new initiatives, and there are a lot of cross-functional teams in a room together. And oftentimes also in person. And it's hard to have a meeting with 20, 25 different people from different backgrounds, from different teams, all trying to achieve the same goal. And I remember I was a part of this particular meeting and everyone was just talking over each other. The conversation kept jumping from one idea to other, and there was no clear landing on anything concrete. And I remember 35 minutes into the meeting, I stayed quiet because I was genuinely trying to understand what the real concern was behind what each team was saying. And that was still unclear for me. So I remember just hearing them out. I was taking notes. I was just trying to, understand what are the concerns every team was having. And towards the end, I remember saying, hey, so let me summarize this for you. And I remember the dynamics changed because since we were bouncing ideas and nobody was mindful of time, no one really was taking notes and they were not able to summarize. So when I said that, I saw, people turn and look at me. And because I was listening intentionally, I was able to summarize what each group was trying to communicate and highlight the common thread that was connecting all of it. So I was able to connect the entire meeting, and the entire tone of that meeting shifted. And people suddenly saw alignment in what they had been missing. And I remember saying, okay, so for the next 15 minutes, let's focus on the outcome. And believe me or not, but we eventually did leave with a clear next step. And that was one of the first moments where I truly understood the phrase influence without authority. Because I wasn't the most senior person in the room. I wasn't the loudest. I wasn't even the most experienced person. But just by listening, observing, and speaking with intention, I was able to guide the room towards clarity. And that again reminded me that impact isn't again by volume. Sometimes saying less actually allows you to see more. And when you finally speak, your voice carries a weight because it is grounded in understanding and not noise.
I feel like not noise is the key word. We are surrounded by so much noise that, like, how do we even filter through that is really important to navigate. So I would say before you tackle any skill, like figuring out how you navigate the noise and chaos is really impactful to whatever it is that you want to do next. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Okay. So I think we're coming up close to our time, but it's a two-part question. It's one question, but it's a two-part question. But I think a super important one. And so the first part of it is, what legacy do you hope to leave as a leader, as a woman in tech leader? And then the second part of it is, if you could leave our audience with one piece of advice, what would that be?
Oh, that's interesting. Legacy. I think I'll come back to the whole noise part of it because I think in general, women, and when I'm talking to my mentees at mentor as Women in Agile, one thing that every women navigates is dealing through that noise. So if I were to leave a legacy, I wish I can leave behind a path where women feel more safe to speak up, safe to take up that space, safe to lead in their own authentic style and not change themselves. And that would be something that I'm proud of. Because again, like I keep coming back to, the age of AI, where technology is advancing so much faster than ever. There are these models running, automating stuff. But those human qualities of empathy, connection, and guidance will matter so much more than any other model can replicate. And I remember, when I met you at AI4, Geoffrey Hinton had a quick keynote, and he said that he wants or he looks at AI as a mother AI. And that stuck with me because he explained this idea where AI, again, not in a literal sense, but it's in the sense of creating technology that nurtures, supports, and guides rather than dominate. And I remember thinking that is exactly how women naturally lead. So when I think about what women can do when they can use their voice while creating a safe space for other, I come back to that concept, right? Like your voice does not have to overpower, but it can guide. It can frame the conversation and help others feel comfortable. And I believe change starts with ourselves. So I try to model that behavior I want to see. So when I see someone getting spoken over or they're not able to participate in a conversation, I'll pause the conversation and ask them, do you have a point? Or I just point out quickly, hey, I think she had a point. Can we go back to that? When people see you make room for others, they feel more comfortable using their own voice. And I think this is something that we women naturally excel in, just creating that safe space around us.
Yeah, and I would say I also going back to like accountability and checking ourselves. I'm going to make this statement, and I do often in multiple places, but I think it's important to know our numbers are not low mostly because men hold us back. Our numbers are low because we don't take the risk. Our numbers are low because we don't apply for the job. And then this is where I'm going to hit on what you were just saying on our numbers are also low because we hold each other back. We've gotten into this like competitive, I'm the only one that can shine. It's got to be about me. And I think the reality is we need to understand that the more we can lock arms and create space for each other and help each other, the better off we all are. One person can do something great, multiple people together can do something even better. And so I do want to really like call attention to that because I love that you called it out. We are here to make space for each other. You do really great things. I do really great things. How do we come together and do incredible things? And I really, if there's like one thing in my lifetime that I really hope to like help be part of setting an example or helping to drive change around, it's really the fact that we as women are better together. We do amazing things when we lock arms. And like, it's not just about you. Like, there's a whole subset of people beside you or coming behind you. And it really is our responsibility to turn around, create more seats at the table, call her out in a meeting of like, she has this incredible idea and she's not saying anything. Like, hey, Nemo, I remember you were working on this thing. Do you want to share your input? Because not every woman feels super comfortable lifting her voice or, you know what I mean, in a room where she's not sure or she's dealing with imposter syndrome, which FYI, we all deal with, even men. So like just creating space for each other, like shouting each other out, using even your socials while you're out there building your personal brand, like shout someone out, like, you know what I mean? Just really highlight someone else. I think the more we do that, you naturally shine. And so I just really want to call attention to that. You are incredible. I am so glad. I love how things happen. Like, I met you at a conference and we never knew that maybe we'd ever even see each other again. And here we are sitting here doing a podcast together. Also, just courage to reach out and say like, hey, let's have a conversation, which stems into a beautiful podcast, eventually. But you're doing incredible things, not just in your career, but you're doing incredible things for those that are around you. You're impacting people in ways that you've never seen. And it has been a complete honor to have you on this episode. And I just want to thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I just kind of want to leave this with this creates a ripple effect, right? Like, we met, and through our conversation at that conference, I joined a couple other community programs. So do that for everyone, just support each other. Like you said, lock arms, and that will create a ripple effect that you would never know because you giving someone their space, letting someone talk, or just creating that safe environment for them, that might not mean a lot to you, but that might mean a lot to them. And tomorrow they might create that same environment, that same safe space for somebody else.
Absolutely. Incredible words to leave us with. So again, thank you so much to our audience. Thank you so much for listening in. Hopefully what we are bringing to you is of value. I know I leave with nuggets every single time, and that's what this is about. It's about not having to show up perfect and whole. Actually, Nemo and I were talking about this before we started the episode. Like, we're just sitting here having virtual coffee, and we're having a conversation about things that are super impactful and how we're navigating this. And we just want to include the rest of everyone else in on that and kind of share our tidbits. So keep listening, keep subscribing, tuning in, share with your friends. But we have more coming. 2026 is going to be a big year, and we have some incredible things lined up. So thank you again for your support for all of you guys, and we will chat with you soon. You've been listening to the Women in Tech Trailblazers podcast. Thanks for being here. If something resonated with you, please share this episode with your friends, your colleagues, or anyone you know that needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to catch what's next. We'll be back soon with more real stories and honest conversations. Until then, keep showing up and let's keep making space at the table.